Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown live show, emergency show, coming at you on what day is today? Tuesday, to discuss Tom Thibodeau fired. A shocking development that I'm not sure many people thought was going to happen. I might have. But as always, I'm joined by Andrew Combo Sal, to discuss this in depth. And as someone in New York who's got his finger on the pulse, hopefully, Combo, you got some insight in for us on this, what happened.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic I've been talking about for a long time. I would also say that Tom Thibodeau did a lot better the last two seasons than I even thought he would. But I do think he brought an archaic mindset to the game, especially on the offensive side of the basketball. And then this year they weren't good defensively, so that was a huge red flag. And I'm not surprised. I'm actually surprised at the timing right now, but I'm not surprised that this happened inevitably. And I've been talking about, he's been on the hot seat for a while now. And I could talk about the names that I think should be the coach. Maybe we'll get to that a little bit later.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But certainly as soon as they dragged their feet, even a day or two after the series ended and they weren't announcing like what Tom Thibodeau was going to do or if he's coming back, that was a big red flag for me because he's been there long enough where he deserves the kind of respect to be like, oh, he's our guy. He's
actually, wait. No, I actually heard some of that. I actually did that he was safe, which means absolutely nothing in the business.
Right. But you didn't hear it safe from anybody with the team, right?
We have to look that up. I don't know.
Oh,
yeah, we have to look that up.
It seemed like it was pretty silent, and we're getting some of the reporting from the beat writers sort of, last night. And I even had in one of my DMs, I'm like, it's a lot to read between the lines here when they're trying to say they think he's safe, but all sorts of stuff's going to come out. And we're going to probably hear more things that come out, maybe half of which are true, maybe half are not true. So we'll have to find out what that is about as well. But interesting. And now we probably got to talk, at this point about why and how this unfurled. I mean, certainly if you go back and watch the game one breakdown where the Pacers came back in that insane comeback, right, where they were down by 20, something like that, right? You'll see a lot of these things. I was like, why the terrible timeouts, terrible clock management. They're not playing like a well-coached team. And so that was one of those things where I'm like, they might be looking at that and saying, well, is this the guy that's going to get us over the hump and actually get us to the finals and then a title?
Yeah, no, I never thought that was going to happen. But, it's interesting because they have had 250-win seasons in a row. And now they make the ECF. This is the farthest they've been in 25 years. And Coach Tibbs gets fired. So that's how the NBA is now, though. I mean, we saw with Coach Mike Malone. They just won a championship not too long ago. He's fired. Coach Jenkins, always revered as a very good coach. He's fired. And, that's how it goes. And I think those two coaches are better coaches than Tibbs, in my opinion.
Oh, interesting. I mean, listen, Tibbs has a lot of respect around the league. He is a very good coach. I do feel like in this last year, maybe he had less control than he normally does. Like offensively was interesting. I got to kind of wrap my head around. They had a 5th ranked offensive rated team, but they dropped significantly in the playoffs. And as a style thing, I almost need to kind of go back and just dig into some regular season footage now because I can't understand how they were so high in the regular season. And then like their offensive rating in the playoffs would have ranked them like 20th in the regular season. And you could see it, right? Like the offense kind of devolved into sort of Brunson having to do everything, every possession. And that was strange to me where every once in a while they would uncork, a good out of timeout play. And you're like, well, why isn't that happening more often? And it's like, the quality of shot when you compared it. And that was another video I did with the Pacers compared to the Knicks. Like unnecessarily difficult shots, in my mind, where there wasn't movement, there wasn't screening, it wasn't anything clever. And so at that point, you got to start looking at, okay, is this the guy that can get you to the next level? And I think, that's what the Knicks are, amazingly now that they have some success for having not had it for so long. Now it's like, well, they want to win a title at this point. And I think sometimes you got to say to yourself, this isn't the guy. And that's happened in the past. It's probably been, a good decision.
So you're saying he's almost a victim of his own success?
I think part of it is that because somebody else coming into a team that hadn't gotten that far in 25 years and hadn't won a lot, they'd be revered. But there is a track record with Tibbs, right? There is a bit of a notion that, at some point they tune out and that there's, and it could just very well be communication methods, right? the sour, dour, sort of negative vibe can kind of weigh on you, even with a team as professional as the Knicks, who, Brunson and those guys don't need any extra motivation or any kind of special kind of communication methods. But when you're talking about a play here or there that can get you to the next level, sometimes that's an important part. And, what would have happened had the Knicks won game one?
Oh, they would have won the series and Tibbs wouldn't be fired. And then they make the finals and then Tibbs probably would have never been fired. Or maybe he still gets fired. Who knows?
I know. Or that game one was just kind of covering up some stuff that ultimately we did see, and we had been seeing. We saw that with Budenholzer, right? Budenholzer was, destined to lose to the Nets in 5 games. And then Kyrie gets injured. Kevin Durant's foot is an inch too long. And they ended up winning a title, right? And then he does get fired, but it was really like we saw all the cracks in the armor 2 years before. So that's another interesting thing to kind of wrap your head around as far as Tibbs goes with this. And so that's my concern. And I kind of felt like it was going to happen. It sort of felt like I thought in the middle of the playoffs, I felt like this is the situation they're at where they're not going to get fired.
I think it was harder for me to imagine this because how on fire the city was. Like the streets were crazy here. Like we won a championship every win. So I'm thinking like the coach is not going to get fired after this because the vibes were so good, even though obviously whenever you lose the vibes a little bit. But yeah, man, like the city was so happy. Like, people are coming up to me. He's like, I've been waiting for this for 25 years, But yeah, I mean, in terms of NBA standards, you think he's a very good coach?
I think he's a good coach. I think his teams in the past have played better as teams and as coach teams.
Well, I think it was a different NBA, and I think he hasn't adapted. Like okay. I think that's the biggest difference between him and Rick Carlisle. They're both older coaches, but Rick Carlisle really adapted to the modern style of basketball, and we saw it. We saw it in the series.
Right. Oh, and I agree. And now part of the problem was, that everyone, the Knicks fans, are going to start screaming at lineup adjustments that he did not make. And we can get into that in a second. Let's get to our first super chat, because don't forget, if you want a question of yours answered, the best way to do that is on the YouTube side over the super chat. It would really help us keep the show going, and we really appreciate it. And best friend of the breakdown, Bron, is here with us. Thanks so much, Bron. Thank you so much. What stood out watching the Knicks was how often they struggled on defense under Tibbs. That feels like an identity crisis. Go all in on offense.
Can I ask you a question to build off this question? Do you believe the Knicks' lack of defense is more the way the team is structured in terms of their 2 best players are liabilities, and you're going to have to give them a lot of minutes if you want to win games? Or is it just more Tibbs not doing his job defensively? What do you think?
Well, it was funny. I was right in the middle of doing a Cat video to discuss whether he really deserves the brunt of the focus of the negative stuff for what he did, on both sides of the ball. And what you notice is clearly the vast majority of scores against the Knicks involve him more than anybody else. Maybe second only to when you involve him and Brunson. Okay, to the point where,
I think I don't think it's anything you could do differently with Cat. I think it is his fault and also out of his control.
Okay.
In a lot of ways.
What we were hearing, though, is a lot of the problems with Cat where he's not in the right position. He wasn't playing the call defense. Now, you watch him, and it's funny because he would kind of point the direction he would want the ball handler to go, which is funny because the ball handler's man can't see that. He's behind him right now. He's kind of just doing it as, some sort of a, maybe a quarterback for the defense, but the other guys are just in there. You kind of zone up when you're in the midst of a pick and roll like that. So it struck me as interesting that he was kind of doing that, but he also could kind of sometimes hear him call it out, which is another important thing, which I think was an issue. But there's no shortage of clips I have where as the ball screen is being set, he's on the wrong side. He's like ready to contain where on the opposite side of where the ball screen is being set. And he's not really good enough laterally to kind of recover from that. And the Celtics were better at catching him on these where like Horford would be running up to set a ball screen and then he would flip it at the last second, right? So it looks like the ball handler wants to go to his left and then all of a sudden he jumps the other way. Now he can go to his right and Cat was on the wrong side.
Which Horford's really good at that too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so, but there are other times where he's just on the wrong side. He's playing drop when they won't think he's going to switch. And so, but you're right as far as there is no not a lot of adjustments. I mean, we did see him jump out and switch a little bit, and we saw guys like Tatum and Brown light him up a little bit. But we also saw moments where he guarded them nicely and contested well, and they missed.
I've seen Pascal Fryman mid-range too, in the Pacers series. They did better against the Celtics defensively, for whatever reason. I guess Pacers just hit them with a new look, a unique look, and it was really tough on them.
Well, remember the whole thing about the Celtics where they were missing a lot of wide open shots.
Yeah.
And that's a valid argument, but it's also, if you want to say the Knicks are, a little bit more like physical, and then, so when you're getting banged around a little bit, and then all of a sudden you get open, just doesn't quite feel as open, right? Because you had to work really hard to get there. And that's something, but I don't know if it completely explains why the Celtics went as cold as they did, because I can't argue with you. They did get a lot of good looks, and they knock them down.
I actually think the Pacers make you think on defense more than the Celtics do, right? Celtics is just, it's hard to guard, but it's also a little bit more predictable. It's like penetrating kick, a lot of threes. The Pacers really make you think on defense.
Oh yeah, but here's the thing that's interesting about that, and I actually even I messaged Caitlin Cooper, who covers the Pacers so well. I'm like, so I'm looking at all these scores while Cat is out here, and I'm realizing that they didn't spam the pick and roll with Brunson and Cat enough
the whole season, I think.
And so remember, regular season is a lot different. So it's another reason why you can maybe look a little better on defense than you are, because once you get to the second round of the playoffs, they're going to surgically dissect your defense. And so if there's little things here and there that you can get away with during the regular season, you ain't going to get away with in the second round and third round. But I was actually staggered by how little, in the grand scheme of things, how infrequently the Pacers actually got both those guys involved. So in some weird way, it could have been a lot worse for the Knicks. Like it could have been a sweep or something weird like that if Carlisle had kind of stuck to it more. So I was a little bit confused. Even like the first play of the game in Game 6, they run a thing they got Brunson and Cat involved in the pick and roll, and that I think it was mixed. I think it was Cat guarding the ball handler, and Brunson's man comes up the screen, and it was sort of after another couple of actions. It wasn't like the completely called play that they wanted to start. And it worked really well when people were pointing out that the guys on the bench, on the Pacers bench, were like dapping up Carlisle, because it seemed like, okay, Carlisle wants to told them, hey, we're gonna kill him with this. But then they don't do it enough. It was weird. And so as a result, I found that fascinating that they actually kind of got by a little bit without having to deal with the worst part of their defense.
You said something interesting, because I feel when we think about Cat and Brunson, we think about them as their own entities and not a duo, right? It's not like a Stockton, Malone, Peyton, Kemp type thing. It's like they're really their own player, even though they're only all-stars. And I don't know if that's Tibbs' fault. I don't know if that's Cat and Brunson's fault, but it didn't seem like they played off of each other enough this season.
Oh, I agree. And we saw Cat disappear in huge stretches. And then by the way, Cat had some amazing fourth quarters. He had a couple games where he was just dominant.
Even all the way back to the Pistons series, man, he was hitting some tough fadeaways. Yeah, he had some really huge moments. He played good overall these playoffs. It's just defensively, and his body hold up are like the two big questions, for him.
Right. Although I feel like his body was, he was kind of grabbing at every part of his body, but
it's funny, your guy Stan, he was saying that watch when he gets the ball, all his aches and pains are going to go away, which there was some truth to that, but him lumbering up and down the court, he did look a little hurt.
I thought it was very, very bad form to joke around about what a player might or might not feel, to be honest with you. We don't know if he's really hurting or not. I don't think it was cool to be joking around like that. I know. I love Stan, but I'm telling you, but it wasn't just him. I think,
if Stan is watching what he's watching and he sees he has more energy on offense out of nowhere, I think it's fair. No?
Well, but that was kind of before we got that evidence or whatever. But and listen, Cat is Cat. He is emotional, and he will, display emotions on his sleeve that are either there or not there. But
that's a whole other internet thing.
Yeah, right. Well, remember they traded Randall for Cat, and they traded one version of emotional instability with another version of it, and they got it was better, right? They got farther, which is interesting. But here's the thing about Cat. We'll talk about.
Part of that is that there was less injuries in this playoff stretch too. So,
right. Well, I guess by the time, at least when Brunson went down, it was over, right? They were down in like that part of the game, the clinching game. I think
To go back to the trade, I think they were almost forced into it because Mitchell Robinson was going to be injured for most of the season,
right?
Like if Mitchell Robinson wasn't going to be injured for most of the season, they might have ran it back with Julius. I think,
Yeah, and, I got to check real. Maybe I can while you're talking.
And then Hardenstein left, by the way, too.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah. So by the way, this is another maybe not fair for Tibbs as well, is that this is a different team that had to be thrown together, and this is their first year together, really, when you're talking about it.
Does Tibbs get another job, you think?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think I don't know. I don't think it'd be right away. So yeah, this might be toward the end. He's young, but he's had enough shots here, and I wonder if. And again, it's like there's a standard of behavior that he demands, right? Demanding Tibbs, and certainly players can respond to that. I just worry that in this day and age, there's more optimal ways to communicate. Even a guy like Rick Carlisle, I think, has adjusted impressively, and I can't say enough about that. Offensively is a whole one thing, but I think it's the control that he's relented to.
I think you're right. Even when he talks about like Tyrese's celebrations, right? He's like, Tyrese has earned that, and I thought that was, I thought that was interesting. I think he always sees it through the eyes of his best player. And I thought that was him evolving as a coach. And I think he evolved in the way you're talking about, from the EQ and then the IQ on the court as well, embracing the modern game.
Well, think about it this way: is as he released, because remember in Dallas he would call every single play down the court, and they had to like he'd call it out. And remember when Rondo got there, it became a huge problem because Rondo's like, "What are you doing? I'm going to call the plays. I'm the point guard."
Do you feel that was the difference? I mean, you're captain the Warriors. Do you feel that was the difference between Mark Jackson and Steve Kerr? Like there was more of that, or no?
I think fundamentally the offensive system itself was so much different that remember Jackson was doing still a lot of old post ups,
and Steph was playing a little bit more like a traditional PG, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you'll see off the dribble threes under Mark Jackson as well. It was kind of starting, but not the way they were able to space and move the ball under Kerr. So that's a big one. Now remember the defense was already elite under Mark Jackson as well, and Mike Malone back then. So that was already kind of there and functioning pretty well. But yeah, I think the offense was pretty radically different. And so, and by the way, one thing that I liked that they didn't go back to was Klay Thompson used to post up under Mark. And they went away from that a lot. And I feel like that would have still been a nice thing to incorporate. But
speaking of Mike Malone, I would like to see him as the coach, but birdies in my ear are telling me that he won't be. But I think he'd be great.
Is that right?
Yeah, but I think he would be great, and I think Jay Wright would be great as well.
Right. So that Jay Wright's the other intriguing thing. I don't know. I wonder if that.
I've been saying this forever, by the way. I could pull up a lot of clips if Jay Wright gets a coach, so I want to see it just for combo. I want to see it.
Yeah. Well, obviously he's got the connections with the players too, but
right.
But his first foray into the NBA would be this situation, with a team that's got some flaws, right? I don't know. I don't know if Jay Wright wants to jump into that, but he might.
I think Jay Wright was playing modern basketball before modern basketball.
Well, that is true. Well, okay, so let's talk about that because you can argue that the Knicks offense, and again, it's so weird what happened in the playoffs because I have a feeling when I go back and I watch. But you know what? Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll see some of the same stuff. I for some reason, I'm blanking on the regular season offense that the Knicks were running, but it's so many playoff games, my mind is mush. But we all saw what was going on, right? Like they were competing. It was gritty. It was tough, but it was also like just so hard to get shots that they needed to get shots when, and obviously they ran out of bullets against the Pacers. But the thing I wanted to talk a little bit about as far as Cat goes is that. You can mitigate the defensive issues when you have really good offense, right? So if you're giving up 20 points to the other team, but you're scoring 26 and getting 5 assists, then that's okay. That's a net positive. Like you can get by with that.
As long as the team is good enough defensively, that is true. But then if you start falling under like 10th in defensive rating, I mean, and you're the big issue, that's a whole other issue, right? You know what I mean?
I kind of, although I do feel like it's not as much for individual players if that's the case. If your offense is so overwhelmingly good and you're way outweighing whatever you're doing. But at some point we can probably, I can go through a couple of games and count it, how many points he's giving up directly because he's dropping too much or he's not effective with the contested.
He always drops, even when I think he's not supposed to, or maybe he is. I don't know. I'm not in the huddle, but it feels like he's always dropping when he's supposed to be at the line.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. There are times when he drops and he kind of is late and puts a hand up and the guy misses. Is that good?
I mean, that could be just a player missing a shot, I guess. But yeah.
And so there's plenty of opportunity. Listen, I could do a highlight of Cat defense, and you think he'd be the best defender in the world. I'm telling you.
In the world.
Well, I mean, like there's something where he's like,
I mean, I could. What if you compare it to a Wemby video? I don't know about that, Coach Nick.
So I know, but what's weird is that it's not like it's always like that, right? He every so often he can pull out a good defensive possession, which is probably even why it's more frustrating, I suppose, when you see him ineffective. But part of it also is so if Wemby drops too low and then realizes it and goes, oh crap, and then tries to get out there and put a hand up, you'll miss a lot, right? Because he's long and he's athletic and he's intense with what he does. I don't think Cat. I think the difference between there and Cat is Cat doesn't then accelerate. It doesn't have that length. It doesn't have that same effect when he does try and recover, which is I think the big reason why like wingspan is such a big deal, right? It's not that you can reach farther. It's that it allows you to recover when you screw up your defense and still make a play. And I don't think that Cat has that ability, and that's where he's because there are 100 shots this year where a guy goes up and he blocks one or he puts his hand up and they miss, right? It's like, okay, there is evidence that he can help people miss when they're near the basket and he's near. But how does that explain like the other times when they go right there, boom, and they go right by him and it's a layup? And that's the question. There's a quantifiable effect here, and again, you can mitigate that with good offense. But if he's not integral to the offense enough, then that's another issue, and that goes to Tibbs, right? Where we had too many times where it was just the Brunson show, and there's no question when that's the case, then a guy like Cat's going to get left out in the cold, right? He's not going to get touches, he's not going to be involved, and if that's the case, and then he's giving up the points on the other end, now you're in trouble.
Well, also on top of that Brunson show insight, it's also the Brunson show, but he brings the ball up the court while he's being pressured, and then it's the Brunson show, and Brunson's tired. So it's even that on top of it. Like they got to mix things up on that side,
Yeah. Well, do you think that by the end there, when Nembhard was like ripping him by the end in the game 6, that was I think like game 1 and 2, where there'd be times where it felt like 100% Nesmith on like 75% Brunson, but then Brunson would kind of like he would get the foul, gets to the line, but he still looked tired, and Nesmith looked like he had all the energy in the world because he would bring the ball all the way up, get into his bag, get a few more times in his that's tiring, man. That's tiring. For sure. Yeah. And he still performed and still was nailing shots.
He's a ridiculous player.
When they survived for game 5, I did the breakdown there. I'm now thinking that his biggest runs were the first quarter and the third quarter, which kind of makes sense, right? He's fresh in the first quarter and then he's fresh in the third coming out of the halftime.
Right.
That's an interesting take on there where like when he's fresh is when he's at his best. And Tibbs was refusing to play people. Now, here's the thing about the line.
We got to give Shepard and Matherin and all Nesmith and all those guys credit, man. Like they
were hounding, and that was remember this is a 2-year process. They hounded him in last year in the same idea, and they were pushing the pace. They were just trying to wear them out, and they knew in the long game that they could. And they also knew that because Tibbs wasn't going to play enough guys. So you finally get Shamet out there. And oh my goodness, who was the other guard who was playing who didn't play? And then
Miles McBride?
No. Well, we'll get it.
DeLon Wright.
DeLon Wright. Thank you. That 2-man lineup was doing really well out of the blue, right? And I'm not even sure I liked DeLon Wright out there too much. He was getting after a little bit defensively, but offensively he was limited, I thought. But Shamet was really good, and he was hitting some threes. And so you start to realize, crap, he had that in his bag. Tibbs had that in his bag the whole time, right? And he could have been developing that over the course of a season. So
100%. And I would have gave Kolek more minutes and Dadier, and just to see, like, you might lose a few more regular season games, but you might get some minutes from them in the playoffs as well. That's what I thought.
Right, because there's a development process there where they get their feet and they get comfortable, and then you can use it in the playoffs. So and for that reason, and I'm not even sure I'm going to say that like we kept seeing Brunson conk out at ends of games. Like he still was able to compete and was clutch in a lot of those moments. But I have a feeling if you ask the front office and the Knicks, the playing time issue is probably going to be the number one issue, where like overplaying guys, putting them in positions where they could get hurt because they're playing too much. And he probably would argue he did better. And here's what's interesting is after the first game, he probably said to himself, that was a fluke, right? They didn't, the Pacers didn't deserve to win that game. Our game plan was solid. We had it, So then they get hit in the second game.
I mean, that lost them the series, though. That killed them. Game one. Right. It all comes down to game one. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember we said you lose the first 2 games at home, and that you.
By the way, we did say Pacers at 6. I could find that clip somewhere, but it's probably too late to bring up already. We did say. I think we both said it.
Yeah, but of course, because we're always right. So
we're never wrong. Especially when I bring up the receipts, I'm really never wrong when I do those.
Right. I mean, I had the receipts last night saying that Tibbs is going to be fired, but anyway. I mean, like
those kind of receipts like don't always feel like fun to bring up, It's like,
well, that for sure. No, I mean, listen, Tibbs has been. I've had interactions with him. He's been nothing but the nicest person in the world, and had really amazing basketball conversations with him. And that's what he lives.
Well, maybe he could be the third. Maybe he could be the third co-host now. He has a lot of time on his hands.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get him on. But yeah, if you want to have a really cool and really in-depth discussion about X's and O's, like that's the guy, and it could go on for hours. It's a dangerous conversation. But the question I think would also be like for the front office is the overplaying of the guys and having played too many minutes. It didn't really hurt them, right? They didn't get injured. They were able to stay healthy, and Robinson came back. And by the way, I kind of need to pull out the Robinson Cat lineups. Maybe I can do that while we're talking because I'm kind of curious. I feel like off the top of my head, when they started playing together, those defensive numbers are probably better than the team's defense overall. Thoughts?
And there was also times when Brunson was on the bench where defensively it got a lot better.
So I saw that, and I think that's a little noisy, honestly, because Brunson. So here's the thing about Brunson: they didn't want him to switch. Right when they did a lot of double ball screens, and Brunson's man was the first guy ball screening, and they'd have him like wave a hand or like do a little bit of a hedge and then get right back and out of there. So, but that was an issue, like because they never ever like wanted him to switch, it put everybody else in a compromised position, mainly Cat, because Cat's now the second guy, and then if he has to switch, then he's got to deal with that. Or now he's it seems like that was part of the issue, is that knowing that Brunson was just going to kind of wave when they get out of there gave the offense extra advantages, but I do think that he wasn't as exposed as Cat was. I think that either the other teams weren't going at Brunson like that as much. They were hiding him sometimes. I know he was guarding Horford in the Celtics series a little bit, and that helped him. Like he wasn't being targeted, but Cat was, and it's almost unfair to Cat in the sense that like the word is out, right? He's the guy, right? Kind of like remember when Steph.
Well, I would also say that, go. I want you to finish your point. Sorry to cut you off, but I would also say Cat is probably more safe from being traded now. I think there was like tension there because when they lost, there was like these reports that the Knicks were not happy with some of his defensive effort, and that probably was Tibbs more than the Knicks, right?
Interesting. Maybe not. I mean, listen, if they can trade Giannis for him, then they better trade Giannis for him.
Well, that's what I was saying, but some of the Knicks fans go with the continuity route. They don't
right. And by the way, here's the interesting thing. If you get Giannis and Giannis is not going to shoot threes, then that changes the dynamic. I don't think you can play him and Robinson together. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
That would be really tough.
Well, I mean, well, they play Josh Hart and Mitch together sometimes, right?
But I feel like with Cat, right? Like,
that's true. That's true.
So you got Cat and then Brunson. Now that's some shooting. And then the third guy, McBride.
Well, you never know. Things just in the NBA, you could just totally change the way you do things, and it works sometimes, right? You never know.
But you have to be willing and you have to be able to try and see. And I think that's the thing. The deuce minutes as well, along with the starters instead of Hart, seem to be really, really promising. And he just really wouldn't play them much at all. And that's the other thing that's interesting about lineup data is that it tends to be a concern on my end that coaches aren't looking at it closely enough. The 5-man lineup data to really see stuff. And like, they're just kind of going on instinct and gut, like if I was an NBA head coach now, I'd have AI doing it. I'd have them plugged in. Maybe we'd have the sensors so they can do that during the games. I'm not sure. And you'd know exactly what, and then you know who's out there on the other team. And you'd be able to, manage all of your rotations that way perfectly. I feel like it's still, now sort of by the seat of their pants. Now, of course, foul trouble all of a sudden happens. Somebody gets hits knee to knee, and then you got to deal with something that you're not expecting. But I do think that half of the decisions are just sort of like, go in there, going for him. We need you. I don't know, and I would like to see some more technology leveraged to make those smarter decisions. Let's get to a next super chat from Stinky Dipey. Thank you so much, Stinky. Do you think a modern coach could come in and do a Cavaliers type revival to the Knicks games in depth?
I'm 100% sure of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
Top to bottom communication methods as well, motivationally, for sure. Again, you don't need to use those different motivation techniques for guys like Brunson, because they're just going to bring it, right? They don't matter. It almost doesn't matter what the coach is and what they say, right? They, as far as effort and all those things. And by the way, did you see that there was some shade trying to be thrown towards Mikal Bridges and his defense? And I'm like, what? He dismantled Halliburton in Game 5, took him out of the game. And I'm like, how can anybody say he's not
Well, I think it was his overall play. And the big thing with the Knicks fans is that they gave up 5 first-round picks for him. And if you kind of
was it 5?
Yeah, it was 5. So if you look at the impact
over
the course of the season, it wasn't terrible, but some people point to that. And also him and Brunson haven't been the most ideal fit, even though they have that Nova thing. Like when Brunson was out, he was playing a lot better. He hit that game-winning shot. I know it was against the Blazers, but I don't even know if this is the right place for Mikal. I think Mikal might be better fitted somewhere else, even for Mikal, So
yeah, maybe. Or the offense just needs to have more dynamics.
Yes. I definitely want to see more on-ball reps for Mikal, for sure.
Yeah,
and also, I think that you play ball, Coach Jake. When you have the ball more, you're probably gonna have more energy on defense too. So the defense could get even better, in my opinion.
Okay, but I saw nothing that I would criticize defensively for Bridges. I thought what he did, and he had a hard job, and I wouldn't be surprised that his offense suffered because he's picking up full court and he's denying all over the place. That's really hard to do. And so, I want to make sure he gets his proper hype because he did terrific, I thought, in that series. But it also makes sense when it gets stagnant. There's not a lot of player movement. A guy like Bridges is not going to slash. He's not going to find little openings where he could get into those drives and those little pull-up fadeaways that he's good at. So it won't be as consistent. So that's certainly another issue that another coach could come in and certainly do and find. Now, Mike Malone is that guy as far as his offense. Now, Jokic, there's not a real comparable Jokic player on the Knicks that he could.
No. I mean, Cat is not the passer that Jokic is, but Cat's not a bad passer.
No, he's good.
You could get creative. I think you could get a lot more creative with Brunson and Cat, and maybe even implement some of the stuff you see with Murray and Jokic. And also, Brunson could be a post guy while Cat is being the hub at the top. Brunson could get in the post, and you don't have to dribble the ball. There's a lot of interesting things you could do with those.
Right. So instead of a drive that turns into a post up for Brunson, you can just post him up and save a little bit of energy here and there as well. 100%. Love it. And we've seen Cat from the high post make amazing passes, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm sure they're going to feel her out there and see what the market's like for him, because they got the Cat experience. And it's not necessarily bad, but I do feel like they might, if they have championship aspirations, they might look at that and think we need a different kind of guy at that position.
I would trade Cat for KD straight up.
Cat for who?
KD.
Oh, right. We're hearing KD all over the place now. Cat for KD. Yeah, and then you have Robinson start at center. Yeah,
and also, and on top of that, KD's better than Cat defensively.
Even still, yeah.
Right,
because when you put Cat at the 4, then you're not maximizing his advantage he has on offense as much. But
I think Josh Hart looks better with KD, because he's kind of like that Draymond type guy. I think a lot of guys look better with KD personally. I know people are down on KD because of the whole Suns experience, Nets experience, but man, that guy's still great.
I'm looking up right now. I just want to see if I can find quickly the Robinson and Towns 2-man lineup. Robinson Towns, that defensive rating is 105.2, which would be terrific. So them together, because Robinson can cover up for Cat, right? Cat can play different positions. He's not protecting the rim as much. And Robinson can cover for people who are getting beat. But I think it took him a little too long to get there, right? Is that some of the issues there where they weren't playing them together? Am I thinking that? I can't picture that happening.
They weren't. No. Which 2 players are you talking about right now?
Robinson and Cat.
No, they weren't doing it for a long time.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait. How can that be 8? Oh,
No. Okay,
wait.
but then they took Josh Hart off the bench eventually, even though Josh Hart played a lot.
Yeah, but you know what? No, they actually got a run together in all 18 games of the playoffs. Huh.
Yeah, but there wasn't a lot of minutes in the. It wasn't as many.
Yeah, I can break this out maybe by. Can I do this by?
You know what? Actually, Mitch just should have been playing more period at times, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that guy. No end to how amazed I was at how we can get offensive rebounds. It was just unbelievable.
Well, Knicks fans were killing me that I said he was the second most impactful player in the Celtics series, and I think I'll stand by that. I mean, that guy's impact was crazy. Yeah.
So in the first round against the Pistons, wait, the Pistons, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. It was Pistons Celtics Indiana.
Yeah. 6 games they played, all 6 games, and they played 40 minutes together, which is one of the lowest, two-man lineup numbers we had. So yeah, not a lot there, which is like a little over 6 minutes per game. Then if we go to the conference semifinals, let me see if I can find that pairing. Robinson and Towns, 6 games, 50 minutes. So less, right? Anyway, so yeah, not a lot. Now watch
that's less than like 9-8 minutes, right? Yeah.
And then it was more minutes. So then the conference finals, it was 6 games, and Robinson. So he ramped. Let's see, where's Robinson and Towns? Here, 75 minutes. So he was ramping it up round over round. Although, wait, now that I'm looking at this, if you isolated the defensive rating of Towns and Robinson together in just against the Pacers, it was terrible, 116.7. So he might have been looking at that. That's interesting to me. Now, I suspect that Brunson being out there was probably a big chunk of that grouping as starters go.
That's noisy.
It's all noisy. Remember, defensive stats are so noisy, but at any rate, so it's tough. And by the way, the second guessing of lineups is the easiest thing you can do. But somebody even tells me if I look at the minutes per game that he allocated to like the guys like Brunson, that it wasn't outrageous like it used to, right? Let's see.
Let me ask you a quick question. Do you feel like this was the right move for the Knicks?
I do. I do. I feel like it's time. I think that they got to the level they're going to get to, and I think Tibbs, they need a new voice. But let's see. So Brunson played 35.4 minutes a game. Hart played 37, and in the playoffs, Hart played 35, which is probably a little bit more than people wanted to when they realized. And then Brunson was at 37.8, and Mikal Bridges was at 39. OG was 39. I wonder if that's got to be top of the list here for playoffs. If I do that real quick, players, traditional stats real quick. I was kind of curious in the playoffs minutes. Wow. You know how many minutes Luka averaged in his 5 games?
How much?
41.
Yeah, he's always played major minutes though.
That's a lot.
But remember the second half, they weren't taking people out. They went 5-man rotation.
That's right. And if you do that with 1 game and you only play 5, it's going to be, I should probably have, let's see, let's have them play 10 games in the playoffs. Let's see what that turns into. So yeah, Jamal Murray is 41, Jokic at 40. Wow. So they play both those guys over 40 a game for those, for the playoffs. But yeah, you see, Mikal and OG are 3rd and 4th in that. And then Brunson is 6th. So yeah, they were, those guys, and Hart was not too far behind. There is a value when you can have a rotation that you can go to that can save those guys a little bit. You might win. You might squeeze an extra win out of that.
Yeah, I concur.
You concur. Well, anything else you want to talk about as far as that goes, and why?
Do you want to predict, or you want to save that for another show?
Well, I'm confused why you don't think Mike Malone is the guy.
I'm just hearing that they're not the fondest of him in that front office. Yeah.
I mean, listen, he just got fired.
I could be wrong. Yeah, I could be wrong. I would like to see it. I mean, I told you this all the time. Like, I remember Mike Malone, in basketball camp. Like, I thought he was a great guy, and then he's a New York guy. Yeah. And I think he's a great coach, and he just won a championship. And I think it'd be good for the city. But I'm hearing it's not going to happen, but I hope it does. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. And he's got New York ties a lot. And He's got the pedigree, but he's a hothead, and that could be something that might give him a little bit of pause. So yeah, Jay Wright, they could throw the bank at him and see if he wants to do that. Is there anybody else? Like, would they entertain bringing Jeff Van Gundy back?
Wow, I think the older Knicks fans would appreciate it, but I don't know. It's
Yeah.
Oh, he had a good season with the Clippers, right?
And there's no question he's got the bug, and I'm sure he would want to get back in that seat again. And he was up, and I mean he stood up probably more than Lou did.
How about Jenkins?
Taylor Jenkins probably should be on that list. I'd imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure he's being considered at the least.
Well, speaking of that, I will say this with certainty: whoever is replacing him has already been talked to and probably locked in.
100%.
Yeah. So like they didn't do this without, I think they had somebody in mind.
And it's going to come out really soon, probably.
Yeah.
I would assume. Yeah.
So right. So that was my take on it. Was they dragged their feet on any kind of announcement whether they're going to extend them or not or whatever. And that was the time when they were trying to find out if the guy they wanted the job. And then boom, here we are. Because again, once it happens where enough days like this go by where there's no news from the.
Does that mean they were probably talking to them during the playoffs?
Oh, now that's interesting. Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, these things could happen pretty quickly. Is it possible it happened after game one?
Oh, wow, that's true. Yeah.
Was game one like the last straw? And they're like, all right, I don't know. That's an interesting question to find out.
How does that look? How does that look for a franchise if they start talking to somebody after game one and then let's say they win a title? Who knows, right? And like, and that could get back to the coach, right?
Yeah.
You got to kind of be sure.
Yeah, right. So I would probably lean with that in context to thinking that they decided to fire him after the series was over, and it was in that period, or maybe when they're down 3-1. That was the beginning of that.
Right. Yeah.
Or after the second game too. Like once it became clear that they weren't going to win the series, maybe that's when they started. So game one probably would have been rational.
Well, Coach Nick, it was never clear. It was never clear.
What was never clear?
That they lost until maybe like second half of that. So what they called them at halftime of like game 6?
No. I mean, right. It was never clear in game one, and then after game two would have been the inkling of wait a minute, maybe there's something here we got to look at, and then game three, and then also and then by game five, no matter that they won it, that might have already. They might have already started to think about it, but I doubt that they actually.
Yeah, because how the coaching community is so small. I don't know if you could like start reaching out to people on feelers if you're not absolutely sure,
And it's bad form on the person receiving the call to like have that conversation. But we've heard of other coaches who have done that without naming names, and I don't know how that goes over. We have another super chat. Let's get to K Mike. Thank you so much, K Mike. Guys, what's the best way to annoy your opponents? Why are they asking me or you? Like, are we the people who know how to do that?
I guess talk trash and say the right things, or when they shoot a jump shot, just poke them in their chest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was going to say I was probably good at this, but I was just physical. I cut you off. I mean, listen,
I'll tell you what.
Defense in pickup. So.
I'll tell you what annoys me in pickup when they face guard me 96 feet in pickup.
Yeah.
Like don't do that. We're trying to hoop. Like, what are you doing? You're going to lose anyway. Don't do that.
Yeah. No, that I hate. That happened to me once when I was playing with a bunch of guys who I knew, and they had heard about me. And so the one guy just face guarded me, and I'm out there outdoors, and I'm like, I'm not going to get a screen. I'm going to back where no one's going to see me open. It was so frustrating.
Right. It's almost like the Devin Booker thing. Don't double me. Remember that?
Right. It's kind of like that. Yeah. So that's annoying. And then I mean, cutting people off when I'm playing defense rigorously used to frustrate people when it was like, I'm just, this is clean defense, maybe reaching in a little bit, but I wouldn't,
he could watch like Rodman, Draymond, guys like that.
The little stuff here and there, little jabs, little stuff out of, or in and around the game where that'll really annoy people. But you don't want to annoy people. You don't want to be that person, right? You want to be a joy to play with, Combo.
Well, I guess for the opponents, you don't want to be a joy to play against.
I mean, why are you picturing like the kind of runs where if you lose, you're off for 4 hours, or you might as well go home, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't get involved in those anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so long, I don't even remember what that's like. But I can remember that was pretty serious, right? You didn't want to leave.
Yeah, I tried. I'm like into my time efficiency run, like just get 3 games in it out. Yeah.
Oh, there's a place here you can become a member, and they have refs for the pickup games, and they're like 11 minutes long, whatever they are. And it's like you get runs. It's great. And like, there's nobody arguing. That's probably the best way to do it these days.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. Well, enjoy the hair while you have it. I'm going to get a haircut after this, so I'm going to get it. Maybe I'll get something like you.
Okay, you're going to get the combo cut. I respect it.
I used to do that more often, and I kind of feel like it's the summer. Let's just kind of go nuts.
Yeah. That's how I felt. Yeah, that's how. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I missed the other super chat here from Stinky Dipey again. Thank you so much, Stinky. Do you think that Malone would use Bridges better?
I think every coach would use Bridges better. How about that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of like MPJ would be like that role, right?
Well, MPJ is more of a movement shooter. I feel like Mikal Bridges does give you more as an initiator if you give him a chance, like he had with Brooklyn.
Yeah. I think if you had more movement and passing, I think he would.
And he don't shoot anywhere as near as good as MPJ. By the way,
he does not. No.
Yeah.
Although I think you were trying to defend, like that catapult that he was shooting. Remember in the beginning of the year, we were all freaking out about it. Ended up being okay, right? Let me look.
I don't know. Like from what I see it doesn't affect him in the mid range, but that three is shaky.
He ended up at 35% on 5.6 attempts per game, which is a little below average.
Okay,
which is probably the high point I would think with that kind of thing. Now let's look at the playoffs. The playoffs went down to 33% on under 5 attempts, and that's not surprising to me either. Everyone's going to tend to see their numbers drop off a little bit in the playoffs. And so if you're starting at 35, you're going to go down a little bit to 33. And then now you're getting to that unacceptable level where you're just bricking too many shots from that distance. But yeah, I would think that he would find more rhythm in a different kind of offense than he did. Although let me just see what his numbers were. So in the regular season, Mikal Bridges averaged 17.6 points a game on 14.4 field goal attempts. In the playoffs, that went down to 15.6 and but 14.6, the same amount of. He's getting the same amount of shots, Combo.
Really?
You know what? I should probably do by per 36. I bet you that's different. So per 36, he took in the regular season, he took 14. In the playoffs, he took 13.4. So it did go down like a shot a game. So that means that he shot worse as well. So so we saw some evidence there where Bridges was not getting the same amount of touches and shots that he was.
Yeah.
And that could probably hurt him. Although he also had moments. He did have moments as well where he was great. But and then to wrap up the whole Cat thing, again, I wanted to stress that, if he can fill up the box score consistently at a certain level, then it's kind of okay what he's doing on the defensive end. But I'm sensing that whatever that number is, he just wasn't getting enough of. Yeah,
no, that was a criticism of Tibbs from me for the whole season, that he wasn't using Mikal Bridges as an initiator enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I'm going to go back to Towns now, because Towns ended up averaging 21.4 points a game in the playoffs, shot 35% from three. That's not good enough. 1.3 assists. Yikes. So he's not generating enough points for what he's giving up. In the regular season, he averaged 24.4. Shot almost 53% from the field, 42 from three. So, those are pretty significant declines offensively, which, that's another issue here is, again, you can get away with it if you are filling up the box score more than he was. I'm thinking he's going to have to post his regular season numbers, 24, 25 a game. He's going to have to shoot 38, 39% from three. You know what I mean? How many assists per game did he get in the regular season here? Karl-Anthony Towns averaged 3.1 assists, and he was a third of that in the playoffs, and probably playing more minutes. So that's the problem. He's not generating enough points.
So he averaged 21.
Yeah, is that what I said for the playoffs? Towns was. Let me go to the playoffs. Towns was 21.4. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's at 48.8% from the field overall. So yeah, I think part of the problem with that kind of offense is it leads to swings really, really good, and then all of a sudden you can't hit a shot, and then everything good, and you want a little bit more consistency on that one. So, well, anyway, Combo, I'm so glad we can kind of get together and do this and break this stuff down. I think it was pretty clear where we are from here. I guess the only question now is who's going to take over. You don't think it's Malone, and I thought before I talked to you it was Malone.
Yeah, I don't think it's Malone.
Okay. And then
for Combo, I want to see it be Jay Wright because I predicted that. But I guess we'll see. Maybe it's always somebody like out of left field, right? That we don't even speak about. It happens like that often.
Yeah, but this one's like, they're on the cusp. They're kind of close. I would be surprised if they don't bring in someone who's got experience.
I want to see Mike Malone, so hopefully it'll happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. Dan Hurley, interesting. I don't know. I don't think he's built for the NBA, believe it or not.
Well, he turned down the Lakers job, so.
Did he?
Yeah.
You saw that whole thing. That was an interesting thing that was going on with that. I don't know if it was serious. That might have just been a little smoke to, for JJ. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway. All right. Well, good stuff. Thanks everybody for being out there to watch the show. Thank you all for the super chats. Really, really appreciate that. Combo, thank you. We're getting close. You know what? How about this? Let's do live shows after every finals game.
What time is that?
Well, these games there aren't any West Coast games.
Look at it trying to pin me down on wax.
They're all at like 5 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Should be good.
o'clock.
I'll say should be good. You know what's interesting is that we didn't even mention Pacers versus OKC, but we'll leave it for another day. It kind of does that show the lack of interest in that? I hope not.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, but there's going to be a distinct lack of interest, as you put it.
Yeah, I mean we just did a whole NBA show going into the finals, and we didn't talk about OKC.
Yeah. But it's not to say it won't be really good. I think the games will be really fun.
All right, here's my hot take.
Okay.
It's actually not a hot take because I personally like Tyrese Halliburton's game more than SGA. What?
You like Halliburton better than SGA's games? Okay. All right. I think that the Thunder are going to beat them in 5. And I think they're going to shut Halliburton down.
I think we're going to see it right away. I think game 1, we're going to learn a lot.
Yeah. I love Hallie. I love his game. Listen, jump passes, everything. I think we're going to see some pain, to quote Mr. T.
Okay. It's fair.
Yeah. I mean, they can just keep unleashing, Dort and then Caruso and then Wallace. And, it's like the never ending, defenders on this guy. And if Halliburton's not having a huge impact offensively, they're not going to win. But I think 5 games. I honestly feel like that's what it's going to be. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm sticking with right now. What's your prediction?
I'd say Thunder and 7.
7. Okay. All right. We all win. All right. Well, good stuff. We'll see it, but let's. I think maybe we'll see you in a couple nights. At least game 1, we got to do a live show. How about that? Thursday night.
I might be somewhere. We have to talk about it. We'll
figure it out.
Right.
Either way.
Right.
Whatever. We'll figure it out. But either way, thanks so much for everybody out there. Thank you, Combo. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Combo?
Yes, sir.